welcome to the launch of second part of the Google Auto Gear Shift 2020 report. Today's launch is focused on two-wheeler. We made the launch of four-wheeler segment on 20th. Today is the launch for two-wheeler. And after the launch, we have a power pack panel of experts who are going to discuss and debate what are the key findings of the report and how the customer and how these stakeholders are reacting to this. The report has been there for over 5 years now, but for the first time, Google Auto Gear Shift report is also bringing about insight and findings on two-wheeler industry. And ET Auto is happy to participate, associate with the launch of this very pertinent and important document on the two-wheeler market. Some of the findings are really eye-opener for me and as well as for the industry stakeholders. We have seen that digitalization has gripped India. We have seen over 500 million internet users that we have right now. In the last 2 years, we have seen over 100 million smartphone users have sprung up in the country, and rightly so. If you look at the two-wheeler searches or research by the two-wheeler buyers, over 67% of the two-wheeler potential buyers are researching about motorcycles, scooters online through smartphones. And if you talk about the influence of dealerships, it is higher than the brand websites. The dealership websites are having more potent when it comes to online search. About 57% people get influenced or by the website of the dealership, and only 49% from the brand website. So this is an eye opener. We always thought that it's largely the OEM website. So there's a good news for dealers. They are certainly going to survive even after digitalization happens. And we'll also talk about the physical aspect, how much of physical, how much of digital will be there in the future. How will the entire retail model for two-wheeler industry is going to change? If you look at the social media influence, according to the report, about 43% of the people who are searching online about two-wheeler get influenced by the social media. If you look at the two-wheeler customers, they are searching video a lot and they are getting influenced by video. So YouTube has emerged as the second largest search engine. First one is of course Google. So these are some of the interesting findings that has come out from this report. Before I delve into the discussion, I would like to invite Kaushik Dasgupta to give a deep dive into the report and give further details on the report. There are exciting findings that will be really gripping all these stakeholders and all those audience who have joined in today. Kaushik Dasgupta is the head of insight and partners at Google India. Thank you so much, Kaushik, for joining in today. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nabeel. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope you and your families are keeping safe. I'm really excited to present to you our digital first launch of the Google Auto Gear Report for 2020 for India. Auto Gear Shift has been published for Google for the last 5 years now. But it's for the first time we are bringing to you the purchase journey of the two-wheeler buyer. Kantar is the ground market research partner for this report. It has indeed been a difficult few months. Not only have we had to adjust to business challenges, but as individuals, we've all seen a major change in everyday normal. Today, we will share our findings on how the two-wheeler buyer is more connected than ever before and their behaviors in the segment. We have broken down the report into 3 sections. Digital India as we see today, the key consumer insights we find from our study, and the business implication for you as brand and dealers. Digital is impacting Indian industry and consumers alike. With more than 500 million internet users today in India, We are the second highest connected country in the world. India has added more than 100 million smartphones users in the last 2 years. And with COVID, we've seen this average time spent also increase over the last few months. We've seen a 33% increase in data consumption. Along with the drop in data prices, this trend is enabling more users to connect and transact online. Talking about transaction, the current pandemic has accelerated this behavior, and we are seeing a 75 to 80% increase in UPI transaction over the last 2 months. With more than 500 million video users coming online at the end of this year, we see this trend impacting this category even more. We will talk a lot more when I cover the video section in our study. While digital behavior is getting accelerated across, we are seeing the pandemic impacting all of us. As per our Google Mobility report, we still see a 36% baseline drop when it comes to public transport. And as per our recent Google consumer survey, almost 34% of the two-wheeler intenders said they will not use a public or a shared transport. The two-wheeler market is the backbone for the entire auto industry in India, contributing close to 81% of the auto industry and providing employments to millions. Sales of bike and scooters are 6 times of the four-wheeler sale, and 60% of the two-wheeler sales are coming from beyond the top 11 cities. This industry is also seeing a rise in demand for electric scooters. But not only in sales, we even see the same on our Google searches. Keeping all this in mind, through this report, we wanted to bring to life the depth of this industry through the eyes of the consumer. To unravel the diversity of India, we went across 17 cities from Tier 1, 2, and 3. We spoke to buyers of key sub-segments like scooters, entry bikes, deluxe bikes, and premium bikes. Demographic of age, gender, and SEC classifications were also included. The respondents were chosen based on their access to internet, and we did a 12-month look back based on their purchase journey. In addition, we conducted Google consumer survey and analyzed Google data since COVID to capture the here and now pulse of the two-wheeler buyer. Let's now look at the different moments a two-wheeler buyer goes from the first time they think of buying a bike or a scooter right up to the actual purchase. The journey is complex and interspread with multiple touchpoints. To understand how the two-wheeler consumer engage with brands across the purchase journey, we have broken down the report into 4 sections. The big shift we are seeing, how does it impact the final purchase in connecting the dots? How there's a risk of brand being replaced? And lastly, how tech is the big catalyst that would help brands to build that edge. Let's start with the big shift. Consumers go through different life stages, but what motivates them or triggers a need to purchase a scooter or a bike? Improved finances was one of the biggest triggers across India, across all two-wheeler segments. This was followed by life stages like a growing family, a change in job, or a promotion at work. 9 out of 10 two-wheeler buyers, no matter which part of the country, come online to find information and are influenced by online platforms. This behavior is across scooters and bike segments. However, more for deluxe and premium bikes. While initially they use a combination of online and offline resources, 45% of the two-wheeler buyers start the journey online. It's higher for buyers from Tier 2 cities. Search engine and word of mouth rank as the highest at this stage. As two-wheeler buyers progress on their purchase journey, search engine influence is 81%, followed by online videos influencing 74% of the buyers. For offline, recommendation of family, friends, colleagues was the #1 resource. Higher percentage of deluxe and premium bikes use search engines and online videos compared to scooters and entry bikes. Tier 2 buyers show a high preference for online video, whereas a typical Tier 1 buyer demonstrates a more varied behavior by using multiple online and offline resources. YouTube has emerged as the #2 search engine, with 70% use YouTube in their purchase journey. There is a significant higher influence of YouTube on buyers, especially from tier 2 cities. This consumer preference continues even during the COVID times. As the influence of online video is growing on two-wheeler buyers, it's important to understand how they engage with this platform. Of the two-wheeler buyers who use online video, 9 out of 10 took one follow-up action triggered by what was shown on the video. Almost half of them requested for a price or tried to locate a two-wheeler dealer, amongst all the other actions. Online video helped them also to find answers to the questions about a bike or a scooter. Two-wheeler buyers spend time watching diverse content to understand design elements, to evaluate the bike or the scooter in action, or to read reviews of other buyers. Let's talk about the next theme. How does the connected consumer get all the information and find a dealer? Dealer discovery also happens online. More than half of the two-wheeler buyers find a dealer through a search engine or a bank website or a dealer website. After discovery, 1 out of 3 buyers take an action to connect with the dealer. Only 10% of them will fill an online form, and the majority of them will either call or visit a dealer. It does not end there. Consumers continue researching even while they are physically present at the dealer showroom. Smartphones continue to be the emerging storefront as two-wheeler buyers look for the better deal and promotion, compare interest rates, loan rates, and so on as they move closer to the purchase. The ability to get information anytime, anywhere, even before stepping foot into a showroom has resulted in consumers to shortlist brands very quickly. Let's talk a little bit more about that. 3 out of 4 consumers consider an average of 2 brands, with 50% of two-wheelers buyers have no idea or a little idea about the make and the model. This is true for all two-wheeler subsegments. Brand consideration changes from Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. For Tier 1, buyers tend to evaluate more than 2 brands, whereas buyers from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are more likely to consider anything between 1 to 2 brands. This high digital behavior has resulted in the short window of influence from the start to the end. Almost 95% of the two-wheeler buyers take a purchase within 2 months. Half of them in less than 2 weeks to decide which bike or scooter. On an average, 60% are able to take a decision just after one test drive. This makes it imperative for brands to be in the consideration sphere right from the beginning. Technology is creating and enabling the two-wheeler buyers today to engage, to make his or her decision. In this section, we will share some insights on the usage of technology and the consumer expectation. Let's admit it, technology is here and now. Technology is being used extensively for the personalization by the two-wheeler buyer. 48% of the two-wheelers buyers use a bike configurator today, and almost similar behavior across bike and scooter segments. 6 out of 10 state that 360-degree video VR technologies could even convince them to buy without a test drive. This is no longer an urban phenomenon, as higher number of Tier 2 city buyers embrace this technology. Lastly, 50% of buyers stated that they would consider buying a scooter or a bike online if given the option. For buyers coming from Tier 2 cities, this preference was slightly higher. In the end, I would like to leave some thoughts with you from our study, highlighting some of the key takeaways and business implications it will have. 9 out of 10 two-wheeler buyers go online. Our recommendation, be where your consumers are through their entire journey and enable him or her to make the journey as frictionless as possible. 74% of two-wheeler buyers watch online videos. 9 out of 10 take an action after watching the online video. Our recommendation, leverage video and drive action. Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, two-wheeler buyers are more strongly influenced by digital today. Our recommendation, plan and engage meaningfully across all the consumer journeys, irrespective from which city they are from. More than 50% discover their dealers online and then walk into a showroom. Our recommendation, there are multiple expectations from the consumer. when it comes to a dealer or finding a dealer. The journey is not linear, and the consumer is more likely to call or visit over filling up a form today. Measure this omni-channel behavior while you get your dealers online. More than 50% of the two-wheeler buyers are willing to buy online, even pre-COVID. This behavior is amplified with COVID. Our recommendation? We have seen technology as the big disruptor, and coupled with the current pandemic, the connected two-wheeler buyer is more likely to use technology to engage with brands and finalize their choice. Do not miss out on this opportunity. Thank you for your time. I hope you find the study as interesting as we have. We've tried to compress the findings for this session. However, if you need a more detailed version, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you once again for joining. With that, I hand it over to Nabeel for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaushik, for such an elaborate and in-depth report presentation. Certainly, there was a lot of surprises and learning for me also to understand how the customers are behaving digitally. Looking at the numbers that you just shared, that 45% of the people start their purchase journey online, and apparently 54% of the potential two-wheeler buyers are searching for their dealers online. And we thought that electric scooter may not be at the top of the mind of the buyers, but I see that a lot of huge number of people are still searching for electric scooters. So that shows that the two-wheeler has a lot of potential in terms of electrification of the vehicle. So those are some of the findings. So let's take the finding ahead and start a panel discussion with the industry stalwarts. So we are joined by really great minds who are the people behind this entire market or two-wheeler ecosystem that we have right now. They are on the driver's seat. How do they feel about the report? What's their thought? What is driving this change? And what is the next level of digitalization that we expect in two-wheeler industry? So we have our panel discussion on what is the path to purchase going to be like in two-wheeler industry and how is it shaping? So let me welcome the panel members, Mr. Shubhranshu Singh, Global Head Marketing, Royal Enfield. We also have Mr. Nikunj Sanghi, a leading two-wheeler dealer and chairman of Automotive Skill Development Council and also past president of FADA. We also have Mr. Narayan Sundararaman, Mr. Head of Marketing at Bajaj Auto Limited. We also have Mr. Nikhil Bansal, who is Head of Industry at Automotive Industry at Google India. So before we kick in the discussion with the stakeholders, I would like to bring you in, Nikhil, and understand what's your thought on the digital trend that is shaping the two-wheeler industry. We see still two-wheeler industry is not that gung-ho compared to passenger vehicle industry when it comes to spending on digital. How do you see this report? Do you think it will give some kind of trigger to the industry and bring about some changes?
I hope everybody is safe and sound. Thanks for the time for logging in for this report launch. I'll kick it off sharing some of my thoughts, right? And a lot of it was actually covered by Kaushik, but I'll step back and reiterate as to a little more on the report and why for the first time we actually took this out for the two-wheeler industry in 2020. So Auto Gear Shift is a report globally run by Google in multiple countries. The last one we ran was in 2018 for the four-wheeler industry, specifically on new cars. And from then to now, right, we've seen the industry has obviously gone through a little bit of a turmoil. There's been a little bit of a slowdown, but we as Google wanted to understand that if brands have to keep the consumer at the center, has the consumer made that shift, right? And that's why we said, let's take out a study in 2020 covering new cars, used cars, and for the very first time, even two-wheelers. And the reason we did that for two-wheelers is, one is, is there a myth busting out there which says that is my two-wheeler audience online? And are we as an industry, which is the two-wheeler industry, keeping up to pace given the digital acceleration or adoption of the end consumer, right? So that's a little bit on the study. What I'm going to put out is a couple of questions, right? So I'm going to give some ideas back at in the form of a question. So if today as a two-wheeler industry, are we accelerating on digital at the rate at which our consumers are? right? And we've seen and heard in the report launch that 9 out of 10 folks or buyers today are not only researching online, but a significant 54% of them are actually starting their research on digital. And that's a significant number, right? That's a number basically saying that whatever said and done, I, as an end consumer, is going to start my research online. So as marketers, it's a wake-up call to say, am I spending my time and effort to really influence a consumer who's spending their time on a platform like digital? Second, we also talked about digital India, right? 500 million odd folks on the internet, 400 million odd folks who are using smartphones. Both these numbers are going to double by 2025, if not earlier, right? And today, rural penetration as a percentage of the overall internet as an audience is, I say, 46%. You fast forward that to 2025, it's going to be close to 71%, right? So India 2, India 3 is coming online, right? So again, as marketers, what are we doing to really understand that and change the way we function? Second question out there to the industry is more from the lens saying that is our marketing and technology really coming together? And this is what, as Google will call MarTech, right? Is it coming together to really take on this digital evolution from a consumer standpoint? And the reason I say that is, again, in the report, it said that almost 50% of buyers today are looking at potentially buying online. But what's more important is actually to say that the window of influence is actually reducing. So 2 weeks, 45 to 50% of the buyers are going to convert within 2 weeks. So again, as marketers, are we agile? Is our speed to market, is our technology really up to speed to really be able to cater to this audience? And last but not the least, from a dealer community, and that's when Nikunj and team come in, is how is the dealer fraternity really gearing up to answer this shifting consumer pattern, right? And we've again seen the fact that almost 54% of folks are actually researching for dealers. And a large chunk of people are actually not walking into dealers anymore, but they're waiting for the dealership to be brought to them, which is online. So folks are online across tiers, across segments. It's important now for all of us to really stand up, take note, and make that shift. So I'll part and I'll hand it over back to Nabeel is, if digital is a medium, how do we make it into a lifeline? And we heard that on the four-wheeler panel a couple of days back, where Shashank-san actually mentioned about the fact that digital today is a lifeline to him, given the way they've actually adopted it wholeheartedly. Back to you, Nabeel.
Thank you, Nikhil, for pushing the agenda for the day to the next level. Before I get into the central stakeholders that I will call OEMs, that's how it is seen in Indian market at least. But before that, I'll just bring in the dealer perspective, because we see a lot of digital influence of dealers coming out from this report today. So just want to understand, Nikunj, from you, how dealers are prepared or acting when it comes to digitalization of their sales process, or the way they try to reach to their customers, or what are they doing to get discovered more online or digitally, and what is the shape of Indian automobile dealers when it comes to two-wheeler industry?
So I guess it's more important for dealers to be digital than the OEMs, because I think what the consumer is looking for is the dealer. He's searching a dealer, he's looking for a dealer. And I think dealers will need to be extremely agile, extremely alert to this transformation which is coming in the purchase experience of consumers. I'm in a tier 2 city, and you'll be surprised to know that number of inquiries that we've started getting digitally. We have almost 20 hits, 20 unique hits every day on our website, our dealer website. And the number of people who just click on call button. So I think if you have a virtual number, there's not a call that you're going to miss. The number of calls that you receive through your website is phenomenal. And this I'm talking only of Google. I think if you look at Facebook, so just our two-wheeler Facebook page has over 2,300 people who have liked it. So I think, and I am rural, Alwar is rural. So if that is what is happening in rural, I mean, you can imagine what happens in urban areas, in state capitals and metro towns. So I think dealers will need to now be very independent of how they want to take on this digital journey, while manufacturers help them do it. I think somewhere they will need to take the onus of being aware of how important it is for the dealer to be present where the consumer is, where the consumer is looking for you. You have to go near the consumer, and if you have to go near the consumer, you will need to have a very, very strong digital presence.
Right. So, Nikhil, if I may sort of just come in over here. I think from an OEM perspective, the questions that you put out there are quite thoughtful. So if I was to think of, there's this sort of a drive towards digital adoption. I think we've been aware of this change for some time now. I think what this COVID and this pandemic and this forced lockdown or whatever you call it, this situation has done is to accelerate it to, and you can call it disruption, you can call it acceleration, catalyst, whatever. I think we've just seen it, and the needle has moved pretty significantly. So I think there is, and it is interesting to see that it is populated down to tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And as Mr. Sanghi was saying, that even in towns deeper than that, customers are using digital for various parts of their purchase journey. I think what this indicates is that certainly customers are adapting and adopting really quickly. It is very heartening, I think, to me, speaking as an OEM, that there is so much of interest in this category, in the sense that people take the pains, despite their, all constraints that may be there, that may be bandwidth, or you're not digitally literate, but you've taken the effort. That indicates that people are interested in, and just shows how sort of involved they are in this purchase. And I think that is something that I've picked up through a lot of statistics that has come through on this report.
We have seen the report. It was put beautifully by Kaushik. You have seen the way it is changing. Everything is, of course, moving towards digitalization. I just want to understand, 9 out of 10 people are searching or being influenced digitally. I would like to bring you in, Shubhranshu and Narayan, both of you, and understand how is your marketing spend changing? Does your marketing spend reflect this? Because we still see a very small percentage of marketing spent going on digital by especially the two-wheeler makers. Still, car manufacturers are pacing up, but why there is a lack in this direction when we talk about two-wheeler one by one? If you could briefly tell us.
So I don't know if it's only for me, but you broke up in the middle a little bit. But I think I got the gist of what you were asking. Well, for Royal Enfield, first of all, we take great pride in the fact that there was a pioneering move. There was a very early investment in digital, not only as a platform, but we understood. I think Siddharth understood early that young Indians everywhere are going to live their life digitally, and so while we are about exploration, while we are about getting out to people everywhere, the generalities are more important than the specifics. I think the specifics are only strengthening as we go along. People are going online for a variety of reasons, and we have been invested in A, dealer discoverability. B, we see the need for people to have an online immersive experience. It's not only about information being online. They are interested in triangulating information. They're interested in seeing videos. They're interested in joining blogs and talk groups. They're interested in knowing word of relevant mouth online. And I think this evolution is also to do with the changing demographic. I mean, this country has almost 40 crore people who are not yet 20 years old. And so therefore, this digital search will continue, I think, many decades into the future. And this digital generation is basically, as a reflex, as an intuition, they like to interact with brands, communities, and friends online. And I think search has given us great joy. YouTube has been a very powerful platform for us. But I'm just happy that all the bets are coming through, because we knew this from the beginning. We have been proudly invested in digital, and we have been single-mindedly focused on expanding our presence to all digital means, including our 75 lakh strong social media community, which is very tightly engaged with the brand. So while it is very illuminating, frankly, there's no earth-shattering surprise for us. There's just more and more validation of what we already believe in, and Nikhil knows we have been tightly coupled with the Google team doing a variety.
Shubhranshu will talk about the actual transaction
actual business happening, and that's what shows over 70% of the people are willing to go by AR VR, and they will not like to have even a test drive. They are going to replace that. That's the technology implementation we are talking about. Tools also, we are progressing in that, in this direction. Search has always been there, the influence of search was there, but now we are talking about the next leap. But before we discuss that and bring in Mr. Sanghi, I would like to have your comment, Narayan. What's your thought in terms of marketing spend? Just sharp question, sharp answer I need.
Well, I think I tend to agree with what Shubhranshu said. I think we all know that digital is very important, various aspects of it, etc. Does that translate to saying that all my budget should be in digital? Yeah, in our judgment, no. But I must say that
No,
I
but
think we
average, if you look at two-wheeler, in passenger vehicle still, we have about 25% of the budget going to digital. In two-wheeler, still, overall industry, if you look at it, it's minuscule. How are we seeing this reflecting? Because of the, look at the advantage of two-wheeler, the price tag or the average per unit cost is much similar to mobile phones or something of that sort, 50, 60,000 or 70,000. That is already there, traditionally happening. It is happening online. When it comes to two-wheeler, why can't we see many transactions happening online? Why can't we close the deal online when we are seeing that 70% of the people are ready to take virtual test drives also?
Yeah, one of the reasons for this is that I think different categories have different sort of dynamics. I think if you're specifically asking about e-commerce and the value, you're right. I mean, phones cost upwards of lakhs of rupees and bikes, and you can say that they're equivalent of bikes. But I think there's a fundamental difference. When someone buys a motor vehicle, they know that they're buying an asset that has a post-purchase service element to it. And that's where I think, partners like, our dealer partners, Mr. Sanghi is here, play an extremely vital role. I think in a lot of, so I think it's a bit specious to compare it just on price. Nowadays, successfully, in my view, the phone manufacturers have made themselves completely disposable. I'm pretty old, so there used to be a time when I used to buy a mobile phone and actually get it serviced when it went, sort of faulty. Maybe Shubhranshu will also agree. You buy a Nokia, उसमें कुछ खराबी हो गई, तो you'll go to the service station. आजकल तो फेंक देते हैं, but bike में ऐसा नहीं कर सकते ना. So I think it is a bit specious to just say that, hey, the price is 1 lakh, the price is 1 lakh. Why aren't people going? But I mean, customers are not doing so. I mean, my four-wheeler, I was very particular about the dealer that I chose, and I went and sort of bought it from there. I was very particular about the kind of service that I get, because ultimately my experience in the vehicle depends on all those things.
So no, even service is possible, like physically going to a dealership and you're making payments there physically. You can make online payment. It doesn't stop you from having a service relationship with the dealership. That's what I'm saying. The transactional encouragement is still not coming when we talk about the consumer of two-wheeler industry. Why? Yes, Mr. Sang.
I think there's a great opportunity to actually digitize large parts of some of this transactional related stuff. Certainly, I mean, I think what we've seen with this event is that I think customers are now more open to it. Earlier, they were indifferent to it, and therefore, when people are indifferent to something, there is no great force to change. But now people are open to it, and I think we are seeing within our system a lot of our dealer partners actually move to digitization on this front, whether it is their discovery, their assets on digital, documentation, payments, the linkages with the various financial companies. I mean, all of that has accelerated beyond beyond anything that we've seen. So I think the journey is happening. But if you were to draw a parallel, will somebody go and buy a bike or via e-commerce without visiting a dealer, yeah, there will be one or two, but I'm not sure that that's going to be 90% of the buying.
See, even if you talk about I'll come to you, Mr. Sanghi, if you talk about the dealer's discovery, when the users are or the potential buyers are going to find out the two-wheeler or their product, they are discovering the dealers also online. And we have seen that a large number of dealers still are absent from online presence. They don't have proper website. Even if they have, it's not properly updated and all that. So how the dealers are trying to, pace up this game? Because we see, we were talking about with this the digitalization, dealers will take a back seat. Probably OEM can directly sell and all that. But apparently, the report, Google report that we are talking about today, breaks that perception and says that the discovery or the influence of dealers' website is much more than the brand website. But at the same time, we see the excitement or the adaptability of dealers to digitalization is very less. We have minimal tools available. AR, VR is having very few dealers have it. Why there's a delay when we are talking about this for a decade now almost, at least for the website part. AR, VR is the latest phenomenon, but a website and all, it's been there for a long time. Of course, you will speak on dealers' behalf today.
Okay, so thank you so much, Narayan, for what you talked about dealerships and why it was so important to have a dealer connect and the physical presence of a dealer. I think Nabeel today has decided to do away with the dealer channel totally.
No, I cannot. But yes, I have established that the report establishes the role of dealership coming strong because 57% of the online buyers are influenced by dealerships. So that's what I'm saying. But why dealers are not still ready? How much do you spend on your digital? Do you have fixed, budget for that? I haven't known any even big brands, dealer brands, not doing this.
So, Nabeel, I think you will need to do another research on what the dealers are doing with their websites and what dealers are doing in terms of enhancing their digital presence. I think you will discover some absolutely fabulous dealer websites. And pardon my saying so, some of those dealer websites are extremely consumer friendly, probably more consumer friendly than any other OEM website. So dealers have started allocating budgets. You will be surprised to note then as ASDC, when we launched digital masterclass, we had 15,000 registrations. And 15,000 registrations is not even, we had not even dreamt of. We thought we'll get a few hundred registrations for a digital masterclass, but the response was phenomenal. So I think dealers are extremely conscious in terms of having that digital presence. I think dealers are now started investing in exclusive digital manpower at dealerships. And they do realize that unless they are digitally present, so not just about having showrooms, unless they are digitally present in this www Internet of Thing world, they're going to be out of business. So the change was slow, but when the change has come, I think it has come as a tsunami. And even in tier 2, tier 3 cities, dealers are conscious that they need to be there digitally. And you will see this change happening even faster now with this pandemic in place.
But the fact of the matter, this report says that only 1/3 of the dealerships are online, or they are having strong online presence. Nikhil, what's your assessment of the situation? Because you played a key role in carrying out this report. What's your thought on the dealer partner side when it comes to digitally savvy or digital strength that they have? Then I'll go to Shubhranshu.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that, thanks, Nabeel. I think to answer that, I think both Narayan and Nikunj have echoed it that it's not something that the industry is yet to start, right? I think the industry has started it, taken note of it. It is a journey, right? And if I put into context, the four-wheeler market or the four-wheeler industry saw this as a big trend, and Maruti obviously was one of the leaders in that segment. So that I've seen this trend coming up almost 3 years hence. So 3 years back is where they started this journey, right? And obviously we were fueling a lot of information saying that people are researching more for dealers. That number was 40%. It went up to 60%. And this year we've seen a 72%. So the writing is on the wall, right? So if this is the first time we're taking out a two-wheeler research, it's already showing at 54%. That's almost greater than 1 in every 2 people. It's only going to increase from here, right? And if you've got almost 9,000 odd dealerships out there from a two-wheeler standpoint, how many of them are actually purely digitized? So having a website only, or having, say, a Facebook page or a Google My Business page does not answer the entire story, right? And I really like what Nikunj said. It's even the digital desk, as we call it, right? The person on the ground, how are they nurturing and capturing, say, a digital inquiry and nurturing that XYZ person to actually help convert him or her? And that's the real game changer. More than just having an asset out there, it's a digitized mindset change which has to come into play, if you ask me.
Thank you, Nikhil. I'll come to you, Shubhranshu. You operate in a product segment which is very niche, and it is more of a digital friendly. If you look at the report, also it suggests that higher percentage of people are digitally influenced when we talk about deluxe or premium segments. So, how is your marketing spend mix look like, and how will it look like going forward? How much is it? Are you going to cut from the print or the traditional media and pass on to the digital space? And do you think there's a potential in digital space where you would really like to spend and you feel that there will be a better ROI?
Yeah, so like I clarified early, and as you have mentioned, we were early backers of digital. We understood that this trend manifests itself much clearer way, much earlier, where our intenders were concerned. But I think, as Nikhil and Narayan and Mr. Sanghi were pointing out, this is now a universal trend, and it has percolated down to the heart of rural, and we are seeing this revolution now is here to stay. So far as the simulated journey is concerned, I am very much with Narayan. I think there is a role for the physical interaction. There is very much a specific role for a walk-in customer. There is a need for a test ride, for a feel of the product, and we should provide means. There should be facile means by which they can interact, if they so choose, entirely virtually. But that is not, in a sense, a replacement mindset. We should not look at it from a replacement mindset. So discoverability and information perusal remains a much bigger responsibility. So far as dealers are concerned, we are 100% equipped, including right down to social tonality, what the content should be, how the brand should be presented. The consumer, the intender, does not know between dealer and principal online. For them, this internal plumbing, they're dealing with brand Royal Enfield and with the business as a whole. So far as monies are concerned, I think the only principle, Nabeel, in media planning, which I learned as a rookie manager in the soap world, is that media and message should not be confused. It is only about reach. It's about credible reach, and it's about precise end games. So long as digital provides you a sharp enough way of doing that, or even more efficient way of doing that, the switches will happen. And like I said earlier, we are not overly invested in any one medium, certainly not old mediums, but yes, across industry, I think there is a certain legacy mindedness, which I think is changing at the same rate as which digital is expanding across the country. So the picture will be very different quarter on quarter, and I think within 5 years, you will see an entirely different landscape. For us, it's others playing catch up, and we are very happy where we are right now.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. Nikhil, I'd like to come to you now to understand the entire two-wheeler industry's, strength when it comes to digitalization. We have seen few players are very active. They are taking part in it. Why do you think the big ones, some of the big ones, are also keeping away from this bandwagon? What is the issue? What is the reason? And I would like to understand from Nikunji also. He is a dealer of an OEM who doesn't seems to be believing so strongly into the digital transformation that is taking place. So first, Nikhil, your take, and then I'll go to Nikunji.
Yeah, I think we're all smiling for the same reason, right? But I won't divulge beyond. But I think if you look back, Nabeel, like a couple of years back, we as Google, I've been in Google for 4.5 years. We used to look at the top 10 selling motorcycles and scooters, and we're like, hey, none of these guys are on digital, right? And why? Is it a belief? Is it a mindset? Is that user not online? 2 years hence, which is say sitting today, and I'll share some stats. I mean, obviously, we all know the top 10 selling motorcycles and bikes. Almost 50% at a bare minimum are fairly well invested on digital. And we got two of them on this panel, which is Royal Enfield and Bajaj, right? Having said that, I mean, not that the others are not. In certain segments, they are, right? And to answer your question, Nabeel, for me, it is definitely a mindset and a legacy shift. It's nothing else. And to share some stats, if you see the users change. So as an industry or any industry for that matter, if you're not keeping up to your consumer, I mean, you're not going to come out a winner, right? Let's be honest. It is a new normal, whatever we may say, but the consumer is at the center, whether you're selling soaps, you're selling bikes or a car. If the consumer is not at the center and you're not adopting your business model around a consumer, there is something which is going to potentially go wrong. I'll just share some stats to probably also answer your question, Nabeel. So if we look at Google search, right, and Google search is the epitome of showing that there's an intent for a particular brand, right? For example, two-wheeler searches, right, in 2020 are higher than four-wheeler searches in 2020, firstly, and that's never happened before, right? Secondly, I mean, if you look at it saying that, is the growth coming from premium segment? Because that's typical natural, right? That's a natural way of thinking, saying maybe the premium segment is online and the entry and the deluxe are not. Entry segment today is growing faster than any other segment on digital, right? And two-wheeler searches on Google are growing literally on an average of 50% year on year last 2 years till date. And these are on large bases, right? So 50% growth is substantial. And then the contribution of entry and deluxe is also fairly strong. It's almost in the 30-35% range. And lastly, the question can come back and say, tier-wise, is it just a tier 1 phenomenon or is it also a tier 2, tier 3 phenomenon? And tier 2 today, in terms of just sheer volume of searches for two-wheelers, is higher than T1 and T3 put together. And T3, which is the tier 3 cities, is growing substantially faster than any one of the other two. So, I mean, it's again writing on the wall, guys, right? It's about just making that shift. And it's a mindset shift, if you ask me in one word, Nabeel.
Thank you, Nikhil. So just to ease a bit of question, we have already pointed that some of the big players or the leading players are still not exploiting the strength of digitalization. Nikunj, is it also, can we be a bit other side of the story? Is it that digital is still not a big influencer, or still they continue to sell? That's why they are a bit late to the party, or they think they're still not able to acknowledge the change that is happening or shift that is happening. Is the shift not that efficacious? I know a bit, I'm playing
So I think
advocate, but I'll come to you, Nikhil, also to understand that. But before that, I'll ask Mr. Sanghi to answer that.
So one, I will definitely not go into brands, and I think everybody on the panel will know why I'm not talking of brands. I'm a dealer myself. So it's something to do with mindset. I don't think we realize that specifically at the entry level segment, the consumer is going to be so active digitally. But once we have known this, and I think once we have seen this change, and we have seen this change specifically in this pandemic, I think the change that is coming, Nabeel, is at a pace that you can't even imagine. And I think the mass brands, I think look at any mass brand, and today you look at their digital presence, it is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if I look at their presence 6 months back or a year back versus their presence today, I think it would have gone not by 1, 2, 4, 10 times, 100 times. So I think that's the speed at which the change is coming in. And believe me, so while the customer journey in terms of dealer discovery, in terms of product discovery, in terms of comparing two products is going to be digital, believe me, physical presence and the physical customer experience are going to play an equally important role in the customer journey. So I think a lot of you would have attended weddings in the last 6 months digitally. Can each one of you actually cross your hearts and tell me, did they enjoy that virtual wedding more than an actual wedding that they've ever enjoyed? So I guess while we can't discount digital, the physical presence is going to be an absolute must. And when a person buys a vehicle, believe me, it's the third most important decision that he's taking. And I think we have talked about it. We have talked about his buying a house, is about getting married. And I think the vehicle purchase is the third most important decision which a consumer makes in his lifetime. So I think physical presence is as equally important as digital. And I think that experience with the customer gets once he has decided that this is the brand, this is the product that he wants to buy. I think you need to make his visit to your showroom, to your workshop, to your service center the most memorable visit that he has ever had.
Yes, Nikunj has pointed out very important thing. Dealers should convert into an experiential zone, brand experience, or your personal brand of the dealer has to evolve. That was not there. I think this is a new trend that should come out. Before I go to Narayan and Shubhranshu, Nikhil, just your point on this subject quickly.
No, I completely endorse it, right? No way are we saying that the role of a digital ecosystem or a dealership is thing of the past, right? It is here to stay. The role will change, right? And as Nikunj rightly said, I mean, historically you would walk into a dealership and ask questions saying that, hey, what's the color? What's the price? What are the variants? Today, all that is happening online, right? So the entire research mechanism in anyone's mind is already happening online. They're probably smarter than the guy who is selling them a bike on the floor of the dealership, right?
Absolutely.
So the role of the dealer or the sales rep has to change. It has to be a more of a one-on-one conversation. And this is what we brought up in the four-wheeler pan. It's like a relationship manager, right? That person not just there to close because it is number of brands are only reducing, but that person needs to understand you. Like as Nabeel saying that, hey, before you walked into my dealership, what is it that you're coming in for? What is getting you to walk into my dealership? What is getting you to buy my bike, right, or my scooter? And what is it going to take for me to convert, right? And their role is to convert and drive home a relationship like never before, because they want to hold you and keep you for the longest time in terms of from a lifetime value standpoint, right? It's not just selling the bike, but servicing it, parts and accessories, insurance, finance, whatever you have, is all encompassing before you go for your replacement buy. So
Let's
definitely the
talk
role
about a bit
stays, but changes.
Let's talk about a bit of advantage that probably OEMs are going to get out of this digitalization that is going to shape up the industry going forward. Narayan and Shubhranshu, I just want to understand. You have a very, a complex structure of sales network. You have regional managers and a lot of, legs spread all around. With digitalization, which are the area you think that will be curtailed or made more efficient or lean, that will be an advantage to you as an OEM? I'll start with you, Shubhranshu, then I'll come to Narayan.
Yeah, so I think you're right. Yeah, the typical intender journey, the number of points at which they can interact with the brand as an intender, as well as a consumer, and thereafter for the full life cycle, it is complex. I wouldn't call it complicated. And I think what technology and platforms such as YouTube and Google's partnership with us helps us do is to avoid the complex becoming complicated, and there is a distinct difference, you see. So I think what we resolve easily is understanding, and we've had great learnings after the implementation of GA360, for example. We have a much better understanding of the cohorts, where they are coming from, what they're doing, and so on and so forth. Helps us to present our proposition in a much more efficient manner and in a much more prone to be received kind of a way. Secondly, I think we haven't discussed it now, time may not permit, but I do feel that the impact of COVID, I think Mr. Sanghi alluded to it, this lockdown has raised the bar for everybody, and entire lifestyle has, of course, shifted online. And I don't think two-wheeler purchasers and intenders are a different species altogether. So the fact that uh, behaviors have got hugely incentivized, I think, God willing, very soon we'll be back to a normal, but it will be a new normal, and the quota for digital will remain much higher than ever in the past. So I think the process is not complicated, it is complex, and our partnership with Google, platforms like YouTube, help us to make it much simpler and much more impactful. As a business, I can say that.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. Of course, the pie for the digital is going to increase. That is the verdict of the panel. Narayan, you are a mass segment player. You have a lot of dependence on rural markets also. And the report is an eye opener when we talk about rural, because we have seen that a lot of people, a lot of penetration into the rural has gone into. How do you plan to leverage this opportunity of digital that is going to be there in rural market?
Well, I think the trend even prior to COVID, there was a fair amount of people coming onto digital, even from our smaller towns and rural markets. So we were seeing that trend, and things have got accelerated. What I'd like to sort of reflect on is the fact that, and I think some of my panelists have also mentioned, I think it may not be correct to see this as an either or kind of a situation. I think Shubhranshu put it really, really well. Complex does not mean complicated. And I think the word that is used by a lot of people in digital about making it frictionless, I think that is the opportunity. You can actually see time is for anyone, whether it's me, whether it's you, or for anybody. Time is what we are all fighting with. So, I see a lot of efficiency. It will free up time through our network. This entire digitization, whether you call it payments or documentation or discovery, I think it will allow us to focus our resources to things where we can make them better. We can upgrade skills, we can double down on a few things. I think it frees up capacity, and there is a lot of scope for that. I think rural customers will ultimately also become like urban customers at some point in time. So it's a journey, and we see it as an and. First of all, we don't see it as an or. So I don't think that a rupee spent in digital has to replace a rupee spent elsewhere. That's a choice that any OEM or any dealer will make to sort of chase, as Shubhranshu was saying earlier. I mean, you chase whatever media makes sense for you.
So we have seen the prominence or dominance of video is coming out very strongly in entire digitalization that we are talking about. What are the tools, means, or the ways you guys are trying to exploit this particular medium when it comes to digital journey that you start with your customers or the potential customers? I'll start with you, Nikunj, if you could give us brief sense how the dealers are trying to leverage this.
So I think the best way to use video as a tool is to get referrals from your existing customers, referrals from your service customers, and referrals from the purchase experience that they have had. And believe me, the referrals which are shot on video and posted on your website or on YouTube, they generate a phenomenal amount of interest in the customers. You will obviously say your product is very good, but when your customer endorses his purchase experience, that means a lot. So I think endorsements captured on video are is one of very, very important tools which the dealers can use henceforth.
Thank you. Nikhil, can you share some of the understanding what kind of video have been working and what kind of video have attracted more attention and probably played a role in influencing them?
Yeah, I think I'll just also just build on what Nikunj was saying, right? Nikunj has made a very valid point saying that UGC content, which is basically user generated, right? In this case, it is a buyer who's probably experienced a great brand and is putting out videos. And that's how even Shubhranshu builds his brand, right? Because it's literally that cult which is built around Royal Enfield. And that's what really does well for the brand. So one is UGC content, which is great. Second is also from a dealership lens, like especially in the post-COVID world, right? And we heard this on the four-wheeler panel, where on a typical month, you would, as a dealership, you would do at least 200 odd activities, right? Or activations or whatever you may call it. Today, that's probably down to 5 to 7, right? So and you would historically have probably done a BTL activity, maybe in a mall activation, reached out to 100, couple of hundred, 300, or maybe at max 1,000 people. But today, the power of digital can be put into lens, right? Where literally you take this out, and if you got, say, and since we're talking about YouTube, you got almost 300 million people coming to the platform every day. So that's your potential reach. Since we talked about reach on different mediums, including digital, you can actually maximize that reach, right? And maximize it to not just build a brand for yourself as a dealer, but also drive action. Because we've seen that the minute somebody watches a video, whether it's on YouTube or elsewhere, it actually pushes that person to take almost 9 out of 10 will actually take an action. So that's one thing which I feel we can do more of apart from just building on UGC content. But I think, Nabeel, to answer your question in terms of what all should brands do, I think both Royal Enfield and Bajaj have been doing a brilliant job. I think it's just thinking mobile, thinking digital, and thinking your consumer, right? Because historically, if you run like a typical TV commercial on a digital platform, it's not going to work, right? Because you're moving from a 40-inch screen to like a 5-inch screen. So you need to build for that. And if today we are a mobile first and a digital first and a video first ecosystem, you need to change the way you operate.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Shubhranshu, if you go into the report, there's one interesting thing has come out that when the people or the buyer, potential buyer is considering to take a new two-wheeler, for him, only one or two brand maximum is under consideration. What could be the reason behind it? There are multiple OEMs right now in India, but still, for a buyer, why it is always one or two brands, and then on inside brand probably they are looking for variants or models available. Is
Yeah,
it that yeah?
So I think that's a brilliant question. If I knew the answer for sure, it would be worth billions, if not trillions of dollars. But certainly there is a role that brands play. Generally speaking, I'm saying this is true agnostic to category. Is consumers don't need to think. Once they know what the brand proposition is, they make a short circuit. In consumer psychology, it's called heuristics. They just get to the brand straight. And if you see people shopping at duty free for liquor, you'll get a quick sense of what that means. After seeing everything, they go like a homing pigeon for the brand that they prefer and pick up two, not one at the same time. So I think brand, propensity to consume certain brands, the physical availability is relatively easier to create. Mental availability is that much tougher because people have, and that's true for most things in life. We have a short list of 2 or 3 and not longer than that. But when we do brand health reporting, and Narayan knows this, we will probe for which other brands. So there is one thing which is, let's say, a top of the mind awareness. There is spontaneous recall. We choose to get the long list of what they know, but it may not be top of their mind. And from that long list is where we deduce what is the consideration top two box in terms of brands. And that's a very precious connect between the long list of brands that I know, the short list that is always top of my mind, and then the researched decision that I eventually get to. There is a journey, and that journey is the funnel, which we must digitally and otherwise take care of. So the reason I think people have only a few brands is because we are misers. We are, as consumers, we are misers in lavishing attention and mind space to things in general. And, only a few things are worth the while, and we remember, therefore, only a few things.
So Narayan, what Shubhranshu is suggesting that we are still orthodox in terms of thinking about brands or option. We are still yet to open up. Digitalization has certainly democratized information or the brand perception or everything has reached to many people, but still we see constraint. What's your thought on it before I go to Nikhil?
Well, I mean, I maybe have a little slightly different contrary opinion. I think Shubhranshu and I have sort of gone through the same university of, this top of mind and believing in it, and then ultimately realizing, there is, I think what he's referring to is this concept of tyranny of choice. And I think we're all made to believe that more is better. I think for a majority of customers, given, as I said, time is the biggest constraint in all of our lives. Anything you call it, as Mansu rightly said, heuristics, people have shorthands. It boils down. Actually, I'm not surprised at all. That is the one part of the findings in this study. I mean, I wasn't surprised at all. People have only one or two brands on their mind, really. If you go and ask them, over a cup of tea, कि आप कितने न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ते हो, they'll give you a laundry list. But then if you tell them कि ठीक है आपके पास 5 रुपए है, आप क्या लोगे? Then they'll say Economic Times. That's only one brand.
So
I mean,
thank you.
Orthodox. You're saying they're very sophisticated.
Okay, now let it be there before I.
Can I just say, I'm looking at orthodoxy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're fixated. what I'm saying is, in fact, one area where digital comes in is to open their mind to other choices. It's a democratizing platform as well. I mean, you can choose to invest and have more real estate and be prompted faster, but nobody can stop discovery online. So the network is also it creates a flatter world in that sense. And those who are more decidedly online have more exposure levels, have higher exposure. And after a while, like Narayan was saying, I want somebody to handhold me to make a choice. Too much of information and a superfluity of choice is also a mind-boggling thing. I want to make cleaner, quicker, more powerful choices. So I want help. That's also a consumer mindset.
So as this discussion gets exciting, I would like to bring in our audience also here. All those who are watching us, you can be part of this discussion. You can pose your question. You can put the name of the panel member. Who do you want the answer? And in the meantime, we continue with this discussion. Nikhil, do you have something in mind? Can you give us, unravel those brands which are on the top of the mind of these two-wheeler buyers? And
I mean, again,
one more thing before you start. In passenger vehicle, you have seen the people are more democratic. They have adopted or embraced even the new brands. You have seen two of the new brands have been lapped up by the consumer or the buyers. Why it doesn't happen in two-wheeler? Why are they so conservative or focused or so narrowed down to one or two brand? Why they don't want to explore others?
Yeah, so I think just to stand corrected, Nabeel, I mean, if we're talking about new entrants in the four-wheeler space, whether it's MG or Kia, to name a few, the end consumer is still looking at two brands, right? Maybe one of them is a new age brand which is coming to India, for example, but they're still considering 2 to 3 brands at best. It's a similar state even in two-wheelers, right? And a big, and a report actually said a big window of influence, not rather a window, actually a big influencing factor in deciding between one of those two brands is word of mouth, right? And India, it is a economy where jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai, right? And we know it. And why is it that when new brands are launched in India, a lot of focus is given on how do I drive reach, right? And for example, how do I drive awareness of my new launch so that everybody knows about me, right? There's a reason behind, and the reason is what Shubhranshu and Narayan are referring to is how do I come in the top 2 boxes on consideration. But what's really important, and just to share from a Google lens, right, is today users are coming online. When I said that there's a ton of volume of searches which is happening, it's growing substantially every year. Almost 70% are actually coming with a brand in name, right? Which is actually saying that I'm looking for a Bajaj Pulsar, I'm looking for a Royal Enfield Classic, I'm looking for a Hero Honda Splendor, right? So that means people are coming in based on what they're seeing everywhere else. And I think that's why I like that digital is not here to replace any other medium, right? It is as marketers for us to put effort and time and money on mediums which are influencing my end consumer, right? It could boil down to one or boil down to two, but we're not replacing anything else, right? And that's when I'm going back to the report, which actually you see that while print is a big medium in the industry, almost 45% of our ADEX goes on to print, it's nowhere part of the influencing journey for the end buyer, right? And we do print for multiple reasons. Nikunj is on the call. I mean, and it goes back to the phrase I mentioned that you see a print ad, you see it's going to work, people are going to call, right? You plan digital the same way, you will get much more because people are willing to call versus filling out a lead. And Nikunj talked about this, that he's getting more calls versus than what he's getting in terms of walk-ins today.
Thank you. Nikhil, before I start taking questions from the audience, I'll come to you, all of you, and I just want to understand how will the two-wheeler retail look like in the new scheme of things that we are seeing after COVID. We have seen the digitalization has paced up further. You see that we are just a few months or few weeks away from almost realizing that dream of 5G. That will again change the scenario completely. I'll start with you, Nikunj. How do you see the landscape changing? The biggest concern for dealers has been that it requires huge investment in terms of real estate. With the digital tools being available like AR, VR, you can shrink your size, or probably you can create a more of experiential, physical experiential center, which are less on investment and high on productivity. So do you think that this is going to make it easy for people to become a dealer? As it is right now, we see their books are most of the time bleeding, and the financials that they have to take huge inventories. Do you think that with digital you will be able to predict your future sales better, and all those kind of, using those kind of tools, do you think your business will become more profitable or efficient? How do you see it? And then I want everybody's take on.
So a wonderful question, Nabeel. So I think technology is a very, very big enabler, and what technology does is bring down costs drastically. And I think that is what, as OEMs, as dealers, we need to look at how technology and digitization can bring down our costs. So will digitization improve the productivity and efficiency of my sales manpower? And I'm sure it will, because it's easier for a manpower to digitally answer and digitally reach out to far more many customers as it is physically. Inventories. So I think with so much focus on digital presence, so much focus on the customer being able to make a choice digitally, I don't think we will require the huge showrooms that we have. And finally, the inventories, because I think with the digitization, you rightly said, we'll be able to make much better forecasts. And with the kind of logistics that we have, and when I talk to logistics, I talk about logistics, I also mean the kind of information that we have available in terms of where my stock is, where is it moving, how, when is it going. So I think we are getting into a phase where even in case of inventories, we could have a just-in-time inventory, the way they have it in manufacturing plants, where I think vendors give parts which are just-in-time, they go directly to the assembly line. They don't have warehouses for components anymore. So I think we are moving towards that, and if we use the digital tools the way they are meant to be used, if we use technology the way we are supposed to use, the dealers will be far more leaner, they'll be far more agile, and probably much better equipped to service their customers and give them the experience that they need to. With AR and VR, you don't need huge showrooms, because I think most of the customers will be experiencing their vehicles using these tools, and these tools will keep getting better as the technology progresses. I can virtually go on a test drive. I really don't need to take a test drive. So I think that it will definitely bring down costs dramatically, and the dealers and the OEMs need to work hand in hand to bring down those costs, make the dealers far more nimble and agile, and therefore compete in this world that is coming out.
Shubhranshu, do you agree that it will also make your job easier to reach out to the customer, or be physically where your customers are? Currently, if you look at the central part of any cities, or the hubs of the cities, or the core markets of the cities, have huge real estate cost. Putting up a large scale dealership is not possible. It's very costly. So probably your dealer partners can come closer to the customer, probably in the malls or in the main market areas, where they can probably put up a small, setup where, even physical product is available, and it is mixed with physical and digital kind of infrastructure that helps you. So your reach increases at a lower cost, your efficiency increases. Do you think that is going to happen?
So, the challenges of space for both retail stores as well as service in large metros, places like Mumbai, Bangalore, etc., are well documented. So I think I'll not take too much time on explaining that. But I don't think this is, this is a compensating move towards digital. I mean, one data point that I'd like you to know is, after April, after the lockdown period, as soon as the unlock began, or let's say when people got used to the COVID-related lockdown, we saw the fastest comeback in, and this is Google data, in terms of fastest comeback for search, tier 3 rural, and then tier 2, and then last of all tier 1. So in fact, the propensity to search and discover retail, etc., was inversely proportional to how dense the population was, or how large the population was. So I think really the last mile is right down to the very smallest town centers and even rural areas, and we are seeing this This is not a one-time trend. This is a secular trend, and it is here to stay. So I don't think it's about people can discover us. Why do we need space? In fact, we have, again, I think in a pioneering way, been consistent about our retail storefront. So whether it is the smallest town in India or our store in a Barcelona or a London or a New Delhi or a Bombay, it's exactly the same storefront that people come to. Yes, we have expanded our footprint by going into formats like studio stores, etc. But that's just to rapidly, increase physical availability. So I'm saying the answer is yes. Digital accessibility, digital information does help people, do a lot what they would traditionally do at retail outlets. But I don't think one compensates for the other, and I don't think just because things can be done online, you should be choosing to have smaller stores, etc., etc. These are not one-is-to-one correlations. It may be probable though. If it's business sensible, I'm sure it will happen in the eventual term.
Narayan, what's your thought on digitalization helping in terms of financial and operational efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is pretty straightforward. I think it will definitely help in efficiency. So, I mean, I think digitization needs to be wielded in a manner that you become more efficient. There's no doubt about it. I tend to agree with Shubhranshu. I'm not sure that it is a either or. I mean, there is, and I think whatever makes sense for a business, and I think all dealer partners, as well as our view has always been that it's not a vanity sort of decision कि ये पूरा इतना बड़ा सा एक dealership खोल दो. I mean, it has to make sense for all stakeholders. So and I think we are fortunate that we have very sensible sort of dealer partners with good business sense. So if it makes sense for them to do it, if it makes sense for them to replace a physical test ride with a VR test ride, I mean, why wouldn't we do so? I mean, I think we're open to it, and we'll see how it goes.
What I feel that with the digitalization or digital tool being used, you can predict, you can analyze the number of customer lineup, you can probably also reduce your test drive fleet, you can reduce the size of the inventory, you can reduce the size of the outlets, because you know what is going to happen. Everything right now you don't know. You have very tough to analyze or predict what is going to be the situation tomorrow. So certainly I see that there is going to be operational efficiency with the high level of digitalization or digital tools being used. My next question is from to you, Narayan, Shubhranshu, and Nikunj. Do you see that the dealership downsizing is going to be triggered after COVID? Because especially COVID is a trigger, or you can say every business has come strongly on digital platform, and dealership was already being talked about moving to digital or a lot of digital or physical. So in such a scenario, do you think that in the next few months we will see a trend where dealership will be downsizing themselves? Nikunj? And do you talk to your friends and they are saying that they're working in this direction?
I thought that question would have been better answered by Narayan and Shubhranshu, but because what happens to the size of the dealerships and whether dealerships will be downsized, the number of dealerships will be reduced, I think is a prerogative more with the manufacturer than with the dealer himself. But what I can definitely say so is that I think we have seen in the last 6 months that the size of this industry has gone back to 2010, 2011. And when the size of the channel was decided, when the channel was decided with a view of a growing market, the channel was designed for growth. The channel was never designed for degrowth. So I think the number of units being sold per outlet has drastically reduced. And I think it's going to take some time when we can come back to the levels of 2017, 18, or we can talk of even AMP or Automotive Mission Plan, where the government had planned a certain number in terms of what the contribution of the automotive industry is going to be. I think SIAM and all manufacturers have already reached out to the government and talked about relooking at the AMP 2026 in view of what has happened during the COVID period. So I think overall it's not about so much about downsizing, it's about everybody being profitable. And I think OEMs are very, very sensitive to dealer profitability. I see no reason why something will not be worked out where there will be optimization of the dealership sizes, there will be optimization of number of outlets, and there will be optimization of the footprint which is there in the market, because ultimately it is about making money.
Thank you. Shubhranshu, just follow-up question to this. Do you think you are going to rework on the investment that you look forward from your dealer partner? And how will that be in terms of physical situation? What will be the combination of investment that you will be looking at?
Well, it's I think firstly it's not fair for me to say, and I think it's not really my domain either. But I can tell you where digitization is impacting dealer efficiencies and where we are asking for commensurate change. One is the standard operating procedure on dealing with digital inquiry, right? There has been, I mean, in traditional terms, there has been a higher emphasis on the walk-in inquirer, the person who walks in physically through the door is seen to be real, present, and ready to buy. Whereas things which are coming to you via dealer management system or as an Excel sheet or as data is seen to be a little remote. This is only a human tendency. But now, as Mr. Sanghi was saying, as the dealer population sees, these are very real. These are bona fide. These are people who are willing to convert. They will need to invest in that kind of resource. They will have to be a means by which tracking is done accurately. There are people who will call back and attend to people who are remote and not physically within the four walls of the dealership. So to that extent, there will be a tweak or an amendment in terms of resources and where the emphasis is. And then, of course, how we invest in the catchment. So you could put a finance ad in the newspaper, or you could choose to do many more interesting and engaging things online, or you could do things that make it more pertinent for people to be searching for you. So these are both attitude as well as activities are likely to change in light of overwhelming move towards digitization. So there is nothing nothing to hide away from that. But whether investments will change, size will change, these are all business decisions, and we are in a dynamic environment, so they'll happen when they'll happen. Certainly, we're not prescriptive about it. I don't think we'll say now that you have digital, go to a smaller floor size. That's not the intent.
So before I start taking questions from the audience, one last question from all of you. Looking at the current scenario, just Nikunj also mentioned that the market situation is grim and bounce back to the volumes will be a delay. Once again, I would just want to understand how long will it take, or when do you expect that the volumes of 2019 can be met in two-wheeler industry? Looking at the current GDP scenario, GDP is has direct correlation with the automotive industry. It's always said that it's the engine of the growth. Our reflection of entire economy happens via automotive industry, and two-wheeler segment is a lot of reflection of rural as well as urban market. In looking at the current economic situation, when do you think the volume of 2019 we are going to achieve in two-wheeler space? Start with you, Shubhranshu.
No, I'm not a betting man. It's not fair to speculate. But I can tell you where we are concerned, and I think Mr. Dasri, Siddharth, everybody are on record to say that in terms of inquiries and bookings, we are seeing a return to pre-COVID levels right away. And in fact, I would not be exceeding my brief if I tell you that even like period last year, we are seeing much healthier growth rate in terms of appetite. Now, there are challenges all around, right? I mean, it's a market which is not anywhere remotely normal right now, including supply chains and other things. So I can't gaze into the future farther than to say that people are ready. There is an appetite. We are blessed to be placed in that mid segment. And so, our position, I think, is less precarious than many others. For us, it's business as usual, and we're just hoping that it becomes open enough and free enough as a market, and the conditions change that we can start servicing the demand. For us, the demand is right back and has been for a while.
Narayan, what's your thought? Especially people are saying it's more of pent-up demand also that has brought in a bit of growth in the segment right now, and also an impact of the last year market, which was already one of the worst years for automobile sales. So how do you see this scenario now?
Well, I mean, I'm not a betting man either, so I
Sure.
really
But
don't
you
know.
are in the market, you have the intelligence.
I think in this matter of pent-up demand, yeah, there is some amount of pent-up demand. Now, whether it is so overwhelming that we lap all the sort of 4 months of the first part of this year, we're not seeing signs of that. So yes, there is pent-up demand, but the numbers are what they are, and I think uh, consumer sentiment plays a very important role. So we are still not out of the crisis. So a lot depends on how customers, perceive, wanting to make this purchase. They may want to, whether they have the means. That's the next thing. So I think we're monitoring the situation. Things are. I mean, there are many variables to this. There is supply, there is supply chain, there is lockdown situation, so many things. So very difficult at the moment to tell. There is some amount of pent-up demand, but I wouldn't say that it is so overwhelming that it will sort of wash all the negatives of the last few months.
What's your thoughts, Mr. Sanghi? Then
Okay,
we'll
so
take the questions.
I think I'll put in the same rider that I'm not a betting man either. And but one, I don't think, Nabeel, we should be talking of 2019 at all. Like you rightly said, 2019 was a very, very small base that we are talking about. There was an 18% degrowth in the industry last year. So returning to 2019 levels is not saying that business is as usual. So we should go back much further to see whether business is as usual or not. And what we have seen, I think, till now is, yes, there was a proportion of pent-up demand in some of the retails that have happened in the last few months after we started opening up. But I think a lot of demand which has come from semi-urban rural areas. The rural economy is not as badly hit as the other part of the economy of the country, whether it is services or manufacturing. And I think the urban areas are the ones which have taken the maximum amount of brunt. So can the industry only look at the rural demand to come back to the numbers that they were? Obviously not. There is a huge portion which comes from the urban demand, and urban demand is under stress with job losses, with pay cuts, with small businesses closing down. So I think there is a lot of uncertainty. And I think the biggest uncertainty that we have is how will this COVID behave, and what is the period of time this COVID is going to stay with us. And I think that uncertainty is the thing which is which is holding back a lot of customers in taking a decision, even if they can afford to take a decision. And I think till there is some amount of certainty in the market, till the economy revives, till the jobs come back, till the salaries start happening what they used to be, we need to be extremely cautious. We need to be careful of where we are leading to. But long term, the Indian auto industry is a very, very positive story, is a very big story. I believe in the Indian auto story when it comes to long term. Short terms, I think we are going through a hiccup which we will ride through. And I think this will teach us how to be nimble. This will teach us how to take care of the kind of uncertain situations which come. And I think this uncertainty, this time it was COVID, it could be XYZ, it could be a government policy. So I think we need to be alert, agile and nimble, and we'll go through this. But long time Indian auto industries remains positive, and it's a good growth story that we all need to look at.
Now it's time to take questions from the audience, because we have only 20 minutes left. So we'll take questions from the audience now. The first question comes for Nikhil. No doubt on the importance of digitalization, but why do you think the leader in the two-wheeler segment, who is perceived to be investing less on digitalization, still holds the fort as the number one?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I think, I mean, being on digital or not being on digital does not make you number one or number two, firstly, right? I think the fact that the consumer has made that shift. So being the leader is still selling, the consumer was predominantly maybe offline a couple of years back. Today, the same consumer is online, right? And it's not just Google data. I mean, you pick up any data out there, whether demographics that Shubhranshu talked about. If your communication audience is the millennials, that's almost 50% of our that's the people in out of 1.3 billion people that we have in India, right? If you look at people online, which is say 570 odd million folks today, that number is going to grow to 900 odd million by 2025. The contribution of say rural is going to be 72%, right? And these are your big buyers of massy brands, or the leaders, if I may say, in the two-wheel industry today. But that consumer is now coming online, right? So it's important for brands to start following the consumer before it's too late. And that's the reason why I said they're not there yet.
So next question for Narayan. Would you measure increase in top of mind recall vis-a-vis your spend on digital?
Well, it depends on the brand. It depends on the customers. So the answer could be only digital, depending on which brand it is, what stage it is in, which customer I'm talking to, or it could be both. Or in some cases, it could be only, traditional. I think it all depends on who the customer is. There are enough number of customers of ours who don't own and it might come as a surprise to many people. They don't have a smartphone. They don't have a 3G connection, but they're still a potential customer. I still need to tell my story to them. I'll use traditional medium.
There's supplement question for you, Narayan. What do you think will bring consumers to use the digital platform for browsing and purchasing two-wheelers only?
So what will it take? Question. I think I'm not sure there is something that digital needs to do to get people to transact. Over
what will really entice people to make digital transaction for two-wheelers? That's the question.
Very, very difficult to answer, because I think when people
There's
make a decision,
one formula for this, I think. Yeah, of course.
Bullet to this. I think you can take a look if you want to. I think you need to see the full chain. Are you selecting online? Are you only, you're just making the payment online, and that constitutes e-commerce? Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. Many of our dealers are already sort of booked with payment gateways. I mean, the water is finding its way. So, I mean, if you use that measure of e-commerce, I think there is enough of it happening. However, if you think of the entire thing like it is on, say, Amazon or something, Flipkart, where somebody goes and buys a product, discovers it and chooses it, and then does everything, I think there is some way to go. And I don't think there's one thing that's going to make customers go into that journey. I mean, ultimately, customers will do what works for them.
So, Shubhranshu, next question for you. We are seeing decreased spending on the lifestyle products due to pandemic. Is it a reason why a mid-premium brand like yours is seeing increased inquiries? Does the new normal involve people taking long bike rides as it's safer and can be done by distancing?
So probably a part of that has to do with heightened awareness about the need to be on your own two wheels. As a matter of fact, we did some research around this with bookers in the more recent period, those who had booked recently. And I mean, every month the story has come back to normal, right? We spoke briefly about pent-up demand. We can't be into end September and still be talking about pent-up demand, because the unlock has been progressing for many weeks and months now. But I do think there is a component of the heightened need to have your own means of transport, and two-wheelers has a larger base there. But I would still think the sum total of pent-up demand flowing into later months and or the heightened need to buy your own two wheels, I don't think, at least for us, would go above early double digits, 20 odd percent. I think 80% of it is organic demand, as always has been the case. The other part, which is why premium or prestige brands have seen a downturn, I don't know, but I can only guess, because I mean the world has been locked up, as in people haven't been out, they haven't been making normal decisions. We haven't been wearing all the clothes we have. We haven't been wearing our wristwatch if we are sitting at home. So there is so much that has changed. It's not unlikely that consumption patterns have changed as well, but it's not true for us. Thank God.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. I'll come to you, Nikhil. Next question for you. I wanted to know about, this person asked, he wants to know about the customer behavior on luxury two-wheeler brand difference. Do customers search online for bikes priced between 1.5 lakh and 2 lakh, or scooter bike post COVID-19? We have already said that in this segment the search is even higher, but your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we don't need a report to answer that, because typically the premium segment was like a no-brainer that that person is online, right? Just given the lifestyle that that person is leading, whether it's the Harley Davidsons of the world and the Triumphs of the world, those guys are online. What the report has actually pulled out is the fact it's not just limited to the premium segment, and that's what I was calling out later in my stats, that right from entry, deluxe, scooters, premium, and ultra premium, they're all showing very, very similar dynamics in the way they're responding to digital and the way they're responding to researching online. Whether it is growth in tier 2, tier 3 towns, whether it is the usage of technology in tier 2, tier 3 towns, or in terms of volume of searches across these segments. So to answer the question, they are definitely online, but the interesting part of the report is saying that it's not just them, but everybody else also.
So, Narayan, question for you. How does an automotive CMO judge a dealership when the brand is distributing online leads to its dealers? How do you judge who to give leads among your dealers?
Actually, we don't sort of decide. We actually give the customer, when a lead is a customer, we know where that person comes from. We also have ways in which, if he's coming from a particular town, they select, or we offer to select, saying that, would you choose from a list of dealers in your vicinity, and then the customer makes a choice. And basis that choice, we leave it to the customer. Now, if for some reason a customer has not expressed their choice, then we use, there are certain rules that we have about where that person is given as their location, and then the nearest dealer gets it. Very objective. I mean, there is no favoritism on this front.
Okay. Next question for Nikunj. Nikunj, you earlier in the session you alluded to dealers giving a wonderful buying experience. Now you are saying people would be happy with VR test ride. Isn't that a bit of contradictory? Can you please elaborate on how VR would give a better test ride experience?
So I think it's not at all contradictory, and somewhere the gentleman who has asked this question has not understood what I was saying. So by giving a VR test ride, you can actually end up giving him a much better purchase experience. A purchase experience is what answers your questions. A purchase experience is giving you what you are actually looking for. So if what you are actually looking for, you are able to give virtually instead of a physical test ride, I'm sure the customer will be very, very happy. And these days, the kind of customers who are coming in, specifically the youngsters, I think they are far more interested in a virtual world than in the physical world. So it's all about meeting customer expectations. It's not about whether you're given a test ride virtually or whether you're given a test ride physically. There are customers who will probably still take a physical test ride. So it's about actually coming down and giving what the customer expects you to give. So the purchase experience and a virtual test ride, I think they're two different worlds. We are not, and we should not confuse each with, they're not mutually exclusive. They are together.
So Nikhil, this question is for you, and probably Nikunj can join in. With new EV manufacturers coming and trying to crack the market, will online marketplace for automobile be a reality? Can the whole dealer network be eliminated for sales and be handled directly and with the OEM? Initially in India, the relevance of dealer remains to end delivery and service rather than selling. Do you think they will become a service provider or AMC provider kind of people?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple facets to that question. I heard EV. I mean, EV has nothing to do with the consumer shifting online or the entire industry shifting online, right? I think we need to stand back and actually take note of the fact that in India, it is, as Nikunj said, it is a high involvement product, right? It is the third most involved purchase of your life, right? Behind like getting married and of course buying a house of your own. Today, people still buy a motorcycle or a car online. Potentially, they could, but they will still potentially want delivery at home or at a dealership because it's a family phenomenon, right? They want their family to come together. They want them to experience that delivery, and that's not going to change. The touch and feel of an Indian mindset is still here. Is still going to stay. Processes can move online, right? Right from the time if you're researching online, right from the time of researching to identifying which variant, what is the price of variant, where is it is available, financing, insurance, paperwork can all happen online. Yes, there will come a point, and I'm not a future gazer as well, but there will come a point where the role of a large physical dealership is not really required. Today it's required because you got a service establishment at the back, right? To service that service establishment, you have to have a front end as well. You don't need to have maybe 10, 15 bikes on show, maybe just have a few, have that AR, VR experience. And to the question which Nikunj just answered, it is a facility to wow the customer. It is not an either or. It is not saying that you take a AR, VR, and then you do away with a physical test drive. It is purely showing the consumer that I have also digitized as a dealership, and it's not just you as a consumer who's on digital or digitize yourself, right? So it will move online. It will move to a e-commerce process, and that's the way it's going to head as an industry, but not entirely. There will be a large percentage which will also happen offline at your home or at a dealer.
Nikunj, with EV, we'll see that a lot of parts will reduce, services requirements will reduce. Then do you think it can become partially true? Because we have seen in US, Tesla got into this trouble. They tried to bypass the dealers and all that happened. Do you think something of that sort coming up in India with EV taking over?
I think so Nabeel, I was coming back to Tesla when you talked about EVs. So when you talk of EVs, I think the first brand which comes to your mind is Tesla. But Tesla has not done away with physical presence. Tesla has physical showrooms, windows almost in every mall in the US that you walk into. Any big mall you walk into, you will have a physical Tesla presence there. So Tesla has not done away with the physical presence of the brand where the customer walks in. So I think what Tesla has done is what Nikhil talked about, is made the processes easier, made the processes simpler, where the customer can digitally do a lot of processes which he would otherwise do physically. But yes, physical presence is necessary. To your question whether service needs will reduce, definitely they will reduce when it comes to EVs. But will they be done away with totally? No. So I walked into a Tesla outlet in California, probably one of their biggest outlets, and I was talking to their CEO, and he talked about how tire servicing in EVs became far more important than anything else. So because EVs are heavy, so the tire replacement is far more frequent than you would normally do in a normal vehicle. Software issues, I think those are issues which some of them can be solved online, but there are some for which you will probably need to approach a physical service center and see that your car is attended to. So, and see what has changed in the EV is the driveline, so the engine, the transmission, that have changed, but the steering, the brakes, the wheels, everything else remains. So I think, and those are the components which are serviced the most. Today, with the kind of quality and technology we are talking about, engines are good for 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs, then that's what they are warranted for. You will probably not touch the engine of the car in the entire life of the vehicle. So I don't think it's to do with just the moving parts. So all the other things are there. So there will be a body shop job which needs to be done. There will be a suspension job which needs to be done. There will be tires that will need to be. So I think those service requirements will remain. And so it will reduce dramatically, yes, but whether service will not be required physically, will it be done away with? No. So I think I'm looking at it as a happy future. I'm definitely not looking at it as dark clouds on this business.
There's other subject that always crops up when we talk about digitalization or we talk about transformation in the auto retail. It's multi brand retailing. That's what comes up. But looking at the report that talks about that the users generally use one or two brand. Does that argument of having multi-brand dealership or allowing multi-brand dealership is going to be subsided, or it is going to be further enhanced that people might try to have multi-brand dealership? Start with you, Narayan.
In my view, I think given in this market, the OEM and the dealer partnership is the way it is. I think we've got some way to go before multi-brand dealerships. It's not as if it hasn't been tried. I don't think they've had a great deal of success because it then become the norm. So I think it's a possible business model. It'll have to be up to the stakeholders to sort of look at it and decide whether it works. I think the data on the table seems to suggest that we are some way away from it.
So, Shubhranshu, your thought? Do you think it will enable multi-brand dealership?
Strictly speaking, where our current retail model is concerned, it's out of syllabus. Where I'm concerned personally in India, we are exclusively, single brand retail, and we feel that we are in a unique space. In a few international markets, the distribution may be through outlets where there are more than one brand present, but even there, it is our constant endeavor to try and craft a space out within the outlet to give it very much a Royal Enfield skin, and so it's at minimum it's a Royal Enfield alcove, and I think from a brand interaction point of view, I think that matters. I think the retail theater, the retail setup, dedicated sales staff, all of that makes for a much richer consumer and retail staff interaction. And for me, it's difficult to visualize how physically that can happen in a multi-brand environment. Online, consumers are discovering things in parallel together. In the future, it's not unlikely that there'll be marketplaces where they would interact with multiple brands. But I think as a brand ethos and as a thrust of our stance is to be unique, and we feel retail and customer experience at point of retail is a critical factor and a differentiator for us. So I don't see that possibility.
Shubhranshu, thank you so much. Before we conclude this panel discussion, I'll come to you, Nikhil, and understand, or can you give us some thought and to the audience, how do you see, what are the key mega trends that is going to drive the automobile retailing when it comes to digital transformation? What are the 4-5 things that you think that will lead the ways forward for automobile retailing, especially for the two-wheeler industry? And then we'll conclude it.
I mean, you put me in a spot, Nabeel, because that's best answered by folks who actually lead one of these OEMs. But from a consumer lens is all I can say, right?
But also from the report point of view, where does the report hint? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, today, if you look at the four-wheeler industry, and I look at four-wheeler industry because that was something which was taken on the market maybe a couple of years in advance compared to, say, two-wheelers from a digital standpoint. Today, I'd really like to say what Tarun mentioned, right? Tarun from Hyundai mentioned that historically, or Shashank-san for that matter, said that historically, I would look at infrastructure span, that is my dealer span across India. Do I have 3,000 odd dealerships? Where are they placed, right? Today, he's looking at it differently, and the KPI shifted to say that what is my digital span across India, right? So are these 3,000 odd dealers online, right? And is my dealership walking in and talking to my consumer who today is saying that talk to me? I mean, have a one-on-one conversation with me, have a personalized journey with me, right? Don't treat me as one just out of 4 heads walking through the door, but each four of the 4 heads walking the door is an individual. and treat me as an individual. So in my mind, I mean, to answer your question, Nabeel, is auto retail will change to the effect of saying that personalization is going to be the game changer in the industry. And we've seen that work beautifully for the four-wheeler industry. It's now for the two-wheeler industry. And a lot of the panelists already start doing it. But how do we do it in mass? How do we do it as one industry to say that bring your dealers online, talk to your consumers one-on-one, and really bring them down the funnel and go beyond just what the OEM is doing, right? You have regional offices, you've got dealers. Everybody has to have one strategy to win the consumer and not disparate strategies, which is existent today.
Nikunj, your thoughts on what are the main drivers of this digital transformation, or what would be the changes that you will see at the dealership level or entire automobile retailing?
So I think we have discussed this before, and I again reiterate that when it comes to digitization, the dealer awareness about digitization has to be much better than what it is today. Two, I think the dealer has to realize that he cannot just depend on his OEM to provide the digital tools. I think he will have to take the initiative and ensure that he is as strongly present in the digital world as he is physically. And unless his digital presence is within his area of operation much stronger than competition, there is no reason why he will survive this current environment of digitization. So I think it's about awareness of the dealer owners about how digitization is taking place, and to take the right step forward in digitizing their dealership, their presence, and become digitally dominant in the area that they operate.
Yes, Shubhranshu, your top three.
I think we've discussed enough about the route to market. I think path to purchase will have a very significant dilation of digital presence and digital platforms. Secondly, I think that allows us to be always on. I think one critical difference between daylight hours and digital is that we are always on, and users also contribute to the content and the narrative. So always on is the second part. And I would say the third thing is, it will get more and more earned centric. So I think we have to think like brands have to think like news. I mean it in the positive way, that you can be where the consumers are all the time, every minute potentially. So that's the difference between legacy media and digital media is, where your consumers are. Earlier they used to say fish where the fish are. Now it's you are in the water yourself. You are amongst them. You can be where they are and delight them in newer ways. So I think those are my top three.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. Narayan, your top three trends that you see shaping the digital transformation in automobile retailing, specific to two-wheeler.
Well, I think for me, I had sort of the always on opportunity, but again, I'll qualify it. I don't think you need to be always on for the sake of being always on. I think you need to be, you need to say, there's context is important. So with that caveat, yeah, I think digital is a wonderful opportunity. I think the second thing that I see is that I think this digital will allow us to at least hear signals that the customer sends back. And then it's up to us to listen and then act. So I think in the area of whether you call it insights or whether you call it conversion, I think the digital provides that, and I see it giving us the tools to hear how we convert that to being in a listen mode and then act on it is the challenge for all of us in this game, whether it's OEM or whether it's dealers. I think the last part is, I think there's a huge opportunity to identify and take out a lot of some pain areas that maybe a customer feels in the customer journey. And those may not be the so-called very sexy marketing kind of opportunities. They may really be pain areas. I mean, I need to take out 5 copies of my Aadhaar card. I mean, I just send a scan. And the ability to do that, and the ability to store it, and the ability to act on it, I think is a very low-hanging fruit. I mean, we talked about a lot of the other stuff, but I think taking out the pain in the transaction is for me a very big opportunity that digital offers.
Thank you so much, everyone. So those were the thoughts and understanding of the digital transformation of the people who are really driving this, or those who are at the helm of it. Thank you so much, everyone, once again for joining in at ET Auto and Google Auto Gear Shift report launch. The report will be available at ET Auto and on Google website also probably in a week's time. Thank you so much for joining this exclusive conversation and discussion on the findings of Auto Gear Shift Report 2020. And my sincere apology for the technical glitch. My laptop got crashed, so I had to be away from you, but I could not stop myself and joined in with another computer. Stay tuned to ET Auto for another exciting session. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Nikunj.
Thank you,
Shubhranshu, and
thanks everyone.
everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.